welcome to this week's Ask Charlie, and I thought it was about time that we did some cooking, and not only some cooking, some Christmas cooking, and my favouriteest thing in the entire world, mince pies. And I may be slightly biased, but I think my mince pies are the best. I've had incredible feedback over the years about them, and I have shared the recipe in my Christmas recipe planner, but I thought today I would share it with you all. So let's get baking. I've already made my mincemeat, and that was a recipe that I shared with my members club. So we're not going to be making the mincemeat today, but you can buy shop bought if you don't make your own. It's absolutely fine. We are going to cheat slightly, and I am going to use my Magimix. You can absolutely do this by hand, and I always did do it by hand until I started making mince pies for lots of people. I used to sell them, and I have made hundreds over the years, and so sometimes you've got to cut some corners. So I thought I would actually teach you today the little ways that I cut corners to save time, because we don't have time to do everything by hand, and so sometimes if we can just whiz it up really quickly in a Magimix, then we have to cut some corners, and that is okay to do that. So we're going to weigh out our flour to start with, and I am just using plain flour, and I want 500 grams of plain flour. So let's just weigh this out. Now this will make quite a few mince pies, but the great thing about this is once you've made the pastry, it will keep in the fridge for a little while, so you don't have to make them all in one go. I advise actually just to do half and then half at a later date. So I'm just going to add my flour into my Magimix bowl, and I find it easier to have the Magimix bowl ready on here, because if anyone has tried moving the Magimix bowl, by the time you put it on there, the spindle that's in the middle comes up, and then it's all a bit of a faff. So I find it easier to do it that way. And then I'm using golden caster sugar, and it's 175 grams of caster sugar. And then just pour in your sugar. Now for our butter. It's basically a block and a half of standard butter, 375 grams, straight from the fridge, which is terribly important that it comes straight from the fridge and it's as cold as it can be. And then I want you to cut it into smallish cubes. So let me show you what size we are aiming for. And this is something that you want to work relatively swiftly on, so your butter doesn't warm up too much. We're going for cubes about that size, no bigger certainly. And so I just get my block and cut, and then go across like so. They don't need to be perfect, but you don't want to have big hunks of butter in there. So I'm just going to do the same with this big block of butter as well. Now my butter is all chopped up, and I am adding that in too. Now if you are doing this by hand because you don't have a Magimix, then you just want to use your fingers just to work the butter through the flour and sugar. But you don't want to overwork it, so you've just got to go very, very light with your fingers just to combine that all through. Now, this is where my recipe differs to any other, and where is my microplane. Simon has sweetly been emptying the dishwasher, but he doesn't know where things live, so I'm finding things all over the place, but I can't complain because it's lovely that he's helping. So anyway, I've got my microplane, I've got my orange. Now, zesting an orange, I bang on about this all the time. Whether you're zesting an orange, a lemon or a lime, you want to rotate it the whole time. You don't want any of the pith, because the pith tastes bitter, it tastes revolting, so we just want to take off the very, very top layer lightly when we are zesting like this. And so constantly rotate your fruit, and that way you won't have any bitterness in there. Oh, my orange is zested, and we are going to add in that orange zest into here. So I'm just using the back of the knife, and that way I don't blunt my knife. And just add that all in. And honestly, the orange in the pastry is just, oh my goodness, it's so good. I'm getting overexcited about the thought of these mince pies. I haven't had a mince pie yet this year, so this will be my first one. Now I'm just slicing my orange in half because we are going to juice it. I have juiced my orange, and I am going to add nearly all the juice, but not quite all of it. So 2/3 of the orange juice in with my flour, sugar, butter and orange zest. I'm going to keep a little bit back in case I need to add more. You can always add more, but you can't take it away. Now we're going to turn it on. I don't want to overwork this. We're just going to pulse it, and it will be done very, very quickly. A little bit more orange juice in because I think it's looking a little bit dry, and that wasn't the biggest orange I used. That's better. And that is it done. So that literally took not even a minute in the Magimix. If I was doing it by hand, it would probably take 10 to 15 minutes. So when you're making lots of mince pies, this is a great alternative. Or even if you're not making lots of mince pies but you're short on time, this is a great way to do it. Now I'm just going to tip that into a bowl. That. Now the secret to pastry is to not overly work it. So I'm just going to gently squish this into a ball so it all completely comes together, but without minimum. You don't want an overexcited child in there squidging it and playing with it. No, no, no. Just very gently make sure that it's all come together. Literally like that. Now I'm going to pop it back in my bowl. I'm going to cover it with a tea towel and pop it in the fridge to rest. You could use cling film. I'm trying to avoid using cling film all the time, and where possible, if you can avoid it, do. So I'm just going to literally pop a tea towel over and leave that to rest for at least 30 minutes before we roll it out to make our pastry cases. My orange pastry has been chilling in the fridge, and it's now time to get everything ready to make our mince pies. So I'm using some Philadelphia cream cheese. I'm not going to use the full amount as per the recipe because I'm just going to make, well, yes, I'm not going to make them all into mince pies today, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm just going to pop enough that I'm going to use into there, and I do quite a few things by sight, so I'm just guesstimating how much sugar, and then mix those together, beat them together with your spoon so it's sweetened cream cheese. And oh my goodness, this is another part that just makes these mince pies so decadent and so utterly delicious. And in fact, while my pastry was in the fridge chilling, I had a message from somebody to say, Charlie, I made your mince pies, and even my mother-in-law said that they were good, and that is a huge compliment. So I'm always getting messages this time of year to say I made your mince pies and wow, they were delicious. I'm using my mother's old mince pie tins. Now you can use the paper that is wrapped around the butter, but actually I find it's a bit too stiff, and so actually to properly butter your tin I use a piece of kitchen roll, or you could use some cling film or something like that. But you really want to make sure that your tin is buttered well. You do not want your mince pies sticking. I'm just using half of my pastry, and I don't find this the easiest pastry to work with. So I'm using a silicone sheet which I have dusted with icing sugar to try and help it not stick. And I find actually doing it in smaller quantities easier. So I'm actually just going to do a few rounds at a time. Make sure you ice your rolling pin as well. I'm going to roll it out to about the thickness of a £1 coin, and I'm just going to turn it and dust underneath. We don't want it to stick. It's not the easiest pastry to work with, but boy, it's so delicious. It's worth the faff. It's actually slightly split there, but that's fine. We'll just work around that. And then using a 7 centimetre slightly split in the middle, but I shall just work around that. Using a 7 centimetre fluted cutter, just cut out your rounds and poke them down gently. If the pastry gets too warm, you can just pop it back into the fridge or even the freezer if you're tight on time. I've got some very overexcited dogs. Lola, stop it. She's playing literally like a game of chase with the two little ones. All right, I've got my mincemeat here, and it is time. I've got my lids ready, and it's time to add in my mincemeat. So I'm just going to pop a teaspoon of mincemeat into each of my bases. Oh, I'm very excited for these. I love, 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 love mince pies. Now you can freeze the pastry, and you can freeze the mince pies. So there's something that you can get ahead on. They do freeze really, really well. Just fully defrost them and then heat them through before serving. And I personally love them just on their own, but they're also really delicious with a bit of brandy butter. I know, terribly naughty, but why not? Now with our cream cheese, in fact, well, I'm just going to use a finger. I'm just going to pop a little dollop of this on the centre of each one. I think the combination of this and the orange pastry is what makes them absolutely divine. Now, using a pastry brush and a little bit of cold milk, just pop a little bit of milk around the edge of each one. The milk acts as a little seal when we put the lid on. time for the lids. Just place them very gently on top. And then a little brush lightly of milk over the top. And the final thing to do before they go into the oven is just to pierce a little cross in the top of each one. And it works as a little air hole, which is important to let the steam out when they're cooking. And they are ready to go into the oven. I'm using the roasting oven of my AGA and my plain cold sheet, and they need about 15 minutes. Be careful that they don't burn, and I'm going to turn mine round halfway through cooking so they cook evenly. But if you're using an electric oven, put them in at 200, fan oven in the centre of the oven. Just keep an eye on them and make sure that the tops don't burn, but they should take between 12 to 15 minutes. I was just thinking, I'm going to have to hide the Philadelphia from my husband. He absolutely adores it. So I shall hide it in the back of the fridge somewhere so he doesn't know it's there. Ooh, that's the first batch done. Alexa, stop. So there they are. I've left the plain cold sheet in because my AGA is running quite high and I just wanted to be safe. So let's leave those to cool there. And always take your plain cold sheet out when you're not using it. Otherwise it doesn't have the desired effect. I'm going to leave my mince pies to cool there for a moment before trying to take them out. Now, we've also got to remember that these are handmade. They're not the most beautiful mince pies in the world, but boy, they are so good. Yes, I can't wait for you to try them. And if you do make them, let me know in the comments below what you think and whether you think they're as delicious as I have raved about. But I've tried many a mince pie over the years, and these are by far and away my favourite. And then using a sharp knife, just loosen them out of the tin and pop them onto a plate. Or if you want to pop them onto a wire rack, let them cool completely and then you can freeze them. But oh boy, they are so delicious. And I actually serve them with a little sprinkling of icing sugar because I think they just look really pretty that way. Sorry, I've got dogs padding around. I've actually had one of those days, our internet was turned off for a few hours unexpectedly as they were putting in a new router. I was expecting them to come last week, they cancelled, and then he came today out of the blue. And then I've had a boiler engineer here as well today, and so it's been one of those days, and the daylight is, well, it's actually almost gone, but a little sprinkling of icing sugar. And I cannot wait to try these. Yummy! And I'm going to have very happy children and husband later when they discover that Mummy has made the first batch of mince pies of the year. But I hope that you've enjoyed watching this week's how to. Remember that the recipe is in my Christmas planner. That's a stolen recipe. That's a mince pie recipe. It looks like this on my website and I will leave it linked down below. Thank you very, very much for tuning in, and I will see you on Friday with a new vlog. I actually cannot wait to try one of these. Oh my goodness. They are so good. The pastry is so light and so delicious, and a little hint of orange.